Now that we know what was revealed, let's explore the impacts the logs had. It's useful to think of the impacts of the Iraq War logs in three ways. First, they changed global perception of the post-9/11 wars. Remember what we said earlier about how governments try to manage public opinion about wars by controlling the flow of information. When information doesn't flow the way you want it to, the results are unpredictable. That's why the term leak is the perfect metaphor. We've seen this sort of thing before, and we've seen it since. The Iraq War logs were a massive leak, a huge disruption in the flow of information, and the impact reflects that. Daniel Ellsberg, the famous Pentagon Papers whistleblower who exposed how the government lied about the war in Vietnam, testified that the Iraq War logs were of comparable importance to his own efforts. Numerous other esteemed scholars, writers, and groups have said similar things about the pivotal role Manning, Assange, and the Iraq War logs have played in shining light on the realities of war. The Iraq War logs even contributed to the withdrawal of U.S. forces from Iraq. As author Marjorie Cohn, the former president of the National Lawyers Guild, notes, because of the revelations in the logs, the Iraqi government refused to give legal immunity to U.S. troops. Without a provision of immunity in their Status of Forces Agreement, the U.S. had little choice but to withdraw most troops from Iraq in 2011. This tracks with one of the central reasons why Julian Assange co-founded WikiLeaks. If wars can be started by lies, Assange thought, peace can be started by truth. Think about that for a moment in the context of the run-up to the war in Iraq. We now know that much of the information used to justify the war was incorrect. Whether you believe the war was a good idea or a bad idea, it's universally accepted that the government talking points didn't match up with reality, and that the media failed to do enough to challenge the government. The second big impact is how the Iraq War logs raised and amplified some really important questions. Questions about U.S. law, international law, about war, about secrecy versus transparency, about our political system, about our political culture, and about journalism and the media's role in a democratic society. And the third and final impact of the Iraq War logs are the important consequences for the people involved. In a way, the personality-driven impacts were the least important outcome, but given how these stories have played out, they're crucially important right now when it comes to the future of journalism and who we are as a nation. Chelsea Manning spent 7 years behind bars before her sentence was commuted by President Obama. She spent an additional year in jail on contempt charges for refusing to testify in the WikiLeaks case. Julian Assange was granted asylum by the Ecuadorian government, and he spent 7 years in their embassy in London. He was arrested by British police in April 2019 and has been in a London prison since, fighting extradition to the United States. That's a story we'll address in our next video. But the real takeaway here is the significance of the Iraq War logs themselves. The world learned a lot about civilian casualties, war crimes, human rights abuses, and the manipulation of the truth by the U.S. government and its coalition partners. And that knowledge helped change the way people thought about the war. If that sounds important, it's because it is. Organizations around the world have celebrated the bravery of Chelsea Manning and the work of WikiLeaks. And on the other side of the coin, the Iraq War logs are at the heart of the U.S. government's persecution of Julian Assange. But that's a story for another video, one which we hope you'll check out.